For those who are joining in, let me just go ahead and set the table. This is a, a session that we're calling how to design virtual agents that don't suck. I think that for most organizations, from a CX standpoint, when they're trying to roll out some level of conversational self-service interaction, the bottom rung, of that ladder for success is please just give me a virtual agent that doesn't suck. So today I'm joined by Mark Landry. He is a VP of product at Smart Action. He also runs our CX design team. We have a team here that is dedicated to doing the CX design for self-service interactions, both over voice and over chat. We'll keep this conversation to voice, as that's where the much larger challenge is in designing virtual agents that don't suck. Now with us today was supposed to be Joe Russo, the Associate Vice President at AAA. Joe had a last minute emergency come up, so he is unable to join our session today. And so I'll be filling in just a little bit for Joe. I know some of you are joining today. It looks like you were also at our session. We did this identical session. Mark, was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago for Frost and Sullivan, the virtual event that they were doing? So we're carrying that over here. Let me just, as those are still joining, I'll set the table on what to expect from the discussion today. This is not a set presentation that you would typically get as you're joining into a webinar. We're actually turning this into a live workshop. And that's why we have Mark on the call. We're going to start this conversation first. This conversation is going to be two parts. The first part is actually just setting the framework on how we approach CX design, design principles that we abide by and operate by. We have this reason why Joe is joining us, because we have a makeover example, a CX design makeover example for AAA. We do their virtual agents, do their emergency roadside assistance over voice and chat. Mark's going to step you through the makeover that he did for them. We're still able to do that even though Joe isn't here to help guide some of that conversation. And then we're going to get into a live workshop portion where we're going to ask you to submit your use cases of verticals that you're in. Talk about either CX design challenges that you're having, and ask how would we solve it. You might have interactions your live agents are handling, and wondering, can this be automated? If we were to do it, how could we do it in such a way to deliver a great experience? So that kind of just segues into the about Smart Action. Before we jump into this, if you're wondering who's doing all the talking here, and do we even have any credibility in this conversation today, just to give you just a quick 50,000 foot level about Smart Action. We deliver virtual agents as a service. What that means is that we deliver the full conversational AI technology stack. It's turnkey, it's omni-channel. All of our customers use the voice self-service module. When it comes to chat, some of our customers, they choose to do chat on their own with a DIY tool, but most of them have us operating their other channels outside of voice for them as well. Now, we uniquely, we don't just deliver the technology and throw it over the fence and then you'll wish you good luck on your journey. We bundle our technology together with end-to-end CX services. And when I say end-to-end, that means everything, the design, the build, the ongoing operation. So it means that we're really stepping in more as a partner than just a pure technology provider. Conversations with machines are complex, as you'll see here in a minute. And as you can imagine, that requires experts in their field, not just to design and architect and build the self-service applications, but it's to provide all the ongoing care and feeding after go live to iterate and improve over time. And we would like to think our approach is working for us. We now operate the AI-powered CX for more than 100 brands, some of the top brands in the world. And we are currently ranked as the top ranked solution on Gartner Peer Insights for conversational self-service, as ranked by customer reviews, a 4.8 out of 5. So if you're interested in what others have to say about us, those reviews are a good place to start. So with that said, I'm going to hand this over to Mark. Mark, in addition to running product at Smart Action, He also runs a CX design team. We have a dedicated CX design team that all solutions flow into that team, and then they work through all the associated conversation flows and business rules associated on what we should stay with a virtual agent, what part of the path would that diverge and actually go to a human instead. And Mark, you're the one who actually started this division, this department within Smart Action. And Mark also coming to Smart Action is actually his background is as an award-winning Hollywood scriptwriter turned conversational AI designer. So being an expert in crafting conversations, Mark was able to bring that background over here to what we do at Smart Action to deliver what we feel is best of breed CX design in the marketplace. So Mark, I think it'd be helpful for the audience who, for some of them, this is a great big black box. I mean, you work inside this every day, designing conversations with machines. Maybe you can just step us through a little bit about the design principles that guide you and the rest of your team as you approach conversations.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. And thanks everyone for joining us today. It's Friday, let's have fun. Let's have a good time. I'm going to go through, as Brian said, some principles of our design process and how we approach it. And then we'll throw it open to the floor, and I'll put a whiteboard up here, and we'll just start trying to work through some of your problems and, show you how we do things, how we work with our clients to solve these issues. As Brian said, my background is in screenwriting. I think it's a smart move by Smart Action to have a few years ago looked for screenwriters to start revamping, and we'll show you a makeover here in a minute, taking their conversations with these AI machines and making them feel more human by employing writers, because these are written conversations. The AI is not, there's no AI that is going to service this industry at this point in time that is completely random or on the fly in choosing its own responses. They're all programmed, so there's a lot of scripting that goes on. There's not a whole lot of I in AI at this point, not a whole lot of machine intelligence. So for now, at least, the machines haven't come for my job, but they will. But at the moment, they require some handholding, and that's why writers are employed to do this. I think some organizations that want to get into some AI automation for these conversations will want to do it in-house, and that's totally fine. But just keep in mind that you have to have someone in-house who's got
Dedicated.
a dedicated training, not only for the technical piece, that may be there. Like, you may have some people who can code or put together a flow based on a platform editor that you've got a license for, but who's going to write the conversation? Who's going to be the voice of the customer within your organization to sort of make sure that conversation is ergonomically sound? And that's what we're going to go through. So as my background is in screenwriting, you might be thinking, okay, what has this guy done? So I'll just tell you, if you've ever seen the Disney Channel movie Teen Beach Movie, I was involved in writing that film.
You know what, Mark? It's my favorite movie.
Sure it is, Brian. I know all the songs, which I didn't write the songs, but anyway. So that I've been in LA for a number of years. Written a lot of screenplays that didn't get made for companies like Amazon and Fremantle and others. But just so you have some idea of some credentials here. But in screenwriting, we want to focus everything we do on tension. So the audience is experiencing a movie, for example. Let's say you're going to a movie, it's a 2-hour movie. There is a set of tension and release patterns that screenwriters build into those scripts. So when we're blueprinting the movie, we are blueprinting your audience, the audience's emotions and your emotional journey within that film. So that's, if you think of a screenplay as, pushing your buttons, that's what we're trained to do. And tension is the number one element in doing that. So in a movie, for example, we'll set a tension, like, somebody's parent gets ill and they've got to go on a journey to find the cure and raise money for surgery. So that's a tension. We've set that tension, we go on the journey, and then by the end, we're going to release that tension either in curing the parent or, there's a death, but something positive comes out of it, right? So tension and release. And as human beings, the reason this works is that the way we're wired is we don't just take an action. We don't even have a thought first and then an action. We have a feeling before we have a
Right.
thought. So the people who are calling into customer service lines typically have pretty negative feelings, honestly. So someone's upset about something they bought that isn't working, whether it's an appliance or some consumer good, or they're like we're going to show you in a moment, stuck on the side of the road. They need help. So the tension that people are feeling when they call into a customer service line is really strong. And the issue is with these automated bots, and the reason why people just pound zero and say operator, 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 is that they are not confident when they hear that bot's voice that the bot's going to solve their problem, going to ease their tension, going to sort of smooth things out and solve their goal, right? So if we're not relieving that tension even incrementally right away, that person is not going to stay in that automated conversation. They're going to jump right out. They're going to pull the ripcord. So if you have, if your AI has a robotic voice, if it's just interrogating the person, taking before giving, if it's not personalized to them, doesn't know who they are, that's an issue. So they're not going to be impressed by a bot that doesn't understand by their phone number what their name is, right? So we've got to give this caller more of a sense of comfort and confidence that we can, that the bot is legitimately intelligent enough to keep talking to. So that's our first principle here as we go into design with empathy, to keep that caller's needs and their tension in mind at all times when we're designing a conversation. So what we're going to do here is we'll play you an example. This was a live call that was a AAA example. So it was created by Smart Action before we started this new division of CX design, right? So this was something that Smart Action had done for AAA prior to implementing these new principles. Okay, so the idea is this is a person who's on the side of the road. Let's set the scene for you here, right? This is Alex. He and his wife need to get their daughter her medication, and she needs to take it within an hour. Their battery's dead. They don't know what the roadside assistance provider can do for them. So Alex is calling in, and we're going to play the recording of that call to a point. I mean, the call is really long because it wasn't really designed very well, honestly. And we're going to play it to a point, and then we'll stop it, and then we'll talk about what we heard. I might even talk over it a little bit, so forgive me. And then we'll play the revision. So if we'll go ahead and start, Brian, thank you.
Thank you for calling AAA. My name is Ursa, and I'll be your roadside service assistant today. Are you in a safe location?
Yes.
I see the phone number you are calling from is 916-868-3359. Is this the best number
Yes.
to reach you? Please say or key in the full 16 digits that appear on the front of your membership card, beginning with the 429.
So this thing is telling him it has a name. Who cares? Who cares what the bot's name is? What's the guy's name? Key in your full 16 digits. This is an interrogation,
Is the vehicle you're calling about currently at your home address?
No.
Okay, with your permission, I can try to detect the location of your wireless device via text message, if it is supported by your device, and cellular carrier. Standard messaging rates from your carrier may apply. May I have your permission to continue?
Yes.
Thank you. A link has been sent via text message to your phone. In order to detect your location, you must have location services enabled on your device. Please click the link and follow the
This is
instructions.
so painful.
Yeah, it's painful for me to listen to. Mm.
but we want to get to one
Hold
point in
on
the
the
call.
line while you check your text message. If you are having trouble, or when you have been notified to continue, say continue.
Continue.
While this is going on,
I successfully tracked your location using your wireless
Brian, would you
device.
mind hovering
Thank
over
you.
the
Now,
time
for
to
both
see
you
where it
and
is?
your vehicle near 901 911 25th Street in the city of Sacramento.
Yes.
Great. In a few words, tell me what service you need today. You can say things like, I need a jump, or I have a flat tire.
Okay, let's
I
stop it
need a
there.
jump.
It's 2 minutes in, and it looks like it's about halfway through the call, right? 2 minutes in, the thing finally asks him, what's wrong? That's all you want to do. Like, that's all you need when you're calling in. You want someone to say, oh, I'm sorry you're having trouble. What's wrong? Oh, my car's stuck by the side of the road. I need to jump. No problem. We got you. We can help you. That's all this guy wanted to hear. I mean, he was very patient and he kept going through it, but I would have pressed 0, honestly. So let's take a look at what we've done to improve this experience by redesigning the conversation and replacing the voice with a more human sounding voice, and putting empathy and tension in the forefront of our minds while we're designing this conversation.
Thank you for calling AAA. I'm sorry you're having trouble. Are you in a safe location?
Yes.
Okay, let's get you moving again. What seems to be the problem with your vehicle?
I need a jump.
No problem. We can test, diagnose, and replace batteries on scene. Am I speaking with Alex Stein?
It was about 14 seconds in. She asked him,
Thanks.
what's
I'll
wrong?
send someone out to help. So that the service technician knows what vehicle to look for, are we talking about your 2013 red Honda Civic?
No.
Okay. What color is the vehicle?
White.
What's the make and model?
Toyota Corolla.
Got it. Now, are you and your vehicle currently at your home address?
No.
With your permission, I can text you a link to an interactive map that we'll use to pinpoint your GPS location. Standard data rates apply. If you'd like to use the GPS locator, please say continue. Otherwise, say decline.
Continue.
Thanks. I just texted you the link. When you're done using the locator, simply say continue. I'll wait.
Continue.
Great. If both you and your vehicle are near 909 25th Street, please say continue. If this is incorrect, please say incorrect.
Continue.
You're all set. A service technician should reach you within 45 minutes. Please have your membership card and ID available when the technician arrives. Is that everything for today?
Yes.
Brian, would you mind
Thank
hovering
you for
over
calling
it?
AAA. Goodbye.
Yeah, so this whole call was completed within the time frame of like the half of the other call, where the bot took like a minute to ask, or 2 minutes to ask, what's wrong? How can I help you? Right. So, and this one, within 14 seconds, the bot has relieved his tension, asked him what's up, and said, I can help you. Like, we're good. We're gonna get through this together. I can help you with your battery. Right. It also, when he called in, said, am I speaking with Alex Stein? Like, it took his phone number, pinged the database, came back with his name, and just verified it. It didn't need a 16-digit ID number. It didn't need to pull something out of his wallet and, search his car for a membership card, right? So we want to think about what's in the person's head, what's in their, and then what's in their wallet. And then if, some of our clients need our callers to like look for some piece of mail that they got, which is really hard. So we want to be as intelligent as we possibly can, and leverage the data that we already have about the customer to move things along, to get things going and give them a sense of comfort that we know who they are and we can take care of their needs. Okay, so I see a question and answer over here from Kevin. How do you get the metrics on the calls that were bad customer service, and how, I know it must be hard to recognize them for the good calls. Do you use some sort of NLP or AI? Yeah, so the bad versus the good calls. So what we do, and I think you're going to find this kind of in most situations, is that when we design this call and we have the call flow, right? And if Brian, I could share
Mhm.
a whiteboard,
Yep.
I'll go ahead and start illustrating some of this stuff. So just get my pen here. So we'll have a call flow, and this will be like the initial, call coming in, and it'll go to like a different modules that we have, right? So we'll have a front door. So think of your house and your front door. This is people coming in your home is the same thing. People are coming into our space and our conversational AI experience. So this is the front door of that. We're going to greet them. We're going to do some intent capture. So how can I help you today? We'll do some authentication if we need to do that, and then some routing to maybe different modules that we have available within that call flow scenario, right? So one might be VIP. What's my point balance? One might be, where's my order status? You know, etc. So we can do multiple modules, and then they'll be at the end. Everything will kind of feed into a closing. But everywhere, and this is a very high level. Obviously, these are broken out into much more detailed, conversation trees, which have branches on them. If you were to break this out, but everywhere in the call flow that there can be an issue, we put these little tags, right? We call them end states. And based on the call flow, we can name these end states or code them in some way where it's appropriate for your business to take a look at the stats. So if the front door says, "Oh, hi, am I speaking with Mark?" And that's the first question that it asks. "Hi, Mark, how are you doing?" And I say, "Wait, this isn't Mark. This is Brian." So somehow the data got messed up in the client's CRM, and Mark's phone number got associated with Brian, and this is something that we need to tag. So this person said, "I'm not the right person. It's a wrong party connect," right? So that end state will be marked as a negative and will come up in the data. If we see that happening across a number of calls, let's say, last Tuesday we got 100 calls where the phone numbers didn't match, and what's going on? We'll have our weekly meeting with you, or we'll reach out to you and say, "Look, we think you might have a problem with your database. Something got messed up. Maybe there was an update over the weekend and some people's phone numbers got into the wrong columns." So that's just one example of how end states can be used as we lay these, think of them as breadcrumbs. Hansel and Gretel, throughout the journey, we'll lay these little breadcrumbs as checks to see in the data, even make trending charts and things as to how the conversations are going.
And to Kevin's point is that how do you recognize the good ones from the bad ones? There's different kinds of end states. Like, for instance, we would consider a bad call if the virtual agent was not able to understand what the intent was. If the virtual agent didn't understand the intent of what the customer is trying to say, we will transfer that call to a live agent, but it will be tagged with an end state of a confusion transfer, meaning that the AI was confused. And then that allows our team to go in and investigate to understand, well, why was there confusion? Was the audio really bad on that call and couldn't understand, or was there something that the speech rec got wrong that needed trade for? The follow-up question: Do we use some type of NLP or AI? The answer is yes. We use AI on the front, on the automated speech recognition piece. We do our own contextual NLP and an advanced NLP where we are actually matching up intents, answers from customers to expected intents, because speech rec is never 100% right. But if we can use the predictive power of what we believe that they're going to say to a limited subset of questions that have a narrow scope of answers, even in case where speech rec is wrong, we can get that right, and that's where the NLP case comes in. Mark, a question from Nina came up, and we're going to throw it to the audience here in just a minute to give us some of their challenges that they would like us to tackle from both a solutioning and CX design standpoint. Nina mentions their financial services company. They're not going to give the caller any info for authentication, and neither would we. They need us to give us everything. So in that case, this is a really good question. So in that case, we have to take and not give. So how do you recommend when you do have to authenticate, the caller before you do anything else?
Yeah, it's interesting. What I would do in that case, Nina, is ask you for the different use cases, and if there are any at all where you would be able to say, "Am I speaking with Mark?" and sort of handle those differently. But on the ones where you definitely have to authenticate prior, what we tend to do is say, what can I help you with today? We'll put the intent up front, and if the person has set an intent that doesn't need to be, strictly authenticated, like a PII or PCI compliance, or HIPAA, then proceed down the more conversational route where we say, "Am I speaking with Mark?" If we do have to do more of a HIPAA compliance, or get really strict with PII, then we'll say, "Okay, how can I help you today?" We'll get the intent and say, "Oh, no problem. We can do that." So if it's, I want to pay my bill, right? "Oh, no problem. We can help you pay your bill. So just for security reasons, I've got to ask you 3 questions." So we'll try to give them sort of a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, it's only going to be 3 questions.
Here's how many questions that you're going to get. Yeah. And I think, and there's a lot to be said too, when you're showing intelligence on the call, but before you even start asking anything. Mark mentioned one piece, which is being able to greet them by name. If you're able to greet someone by name, they're much more inclined to interact with the system because it's showing some level of intelligence between you and the live agent. And there's and we do that just by doing a reverse lookup of whatever number that they're calling in from. We'll do that API against your customer database, and we'll pull up all relevant information associated with that with that phone number.
Yeah.
But the other piece too is we really like to be predictive whenever we can. So it's to say, when somebody calls in, "Hi, Mark, are you calling about your upcoming appointment, on such and such date, or are you calling about your recent order?" There's oftentimes behavioral data that we can pull against to jump in, say something predictively, and when you do that, they're even more inclined. Now, Nina, you're in financial services, so one piece that we do on the financial services side is if somebody's past due on their bill, that will be part of the front door greeting. Are you calling about your bill that's past due as of X date? So doing that goes a long way to increasing caller confidence.
Yeah, and we can even experiment in terms of collaborating with you. One thing we can do for predictability, or being predictive, but without giving away our information bleed, right? We can say, "Oh, hi, this is such and such company. Are you calling about your bill that's due?" We haven't really given away any information, but we have shown that we understand,
Right.
that there's a bill due, right? So, we haven't said how much it is. We haven't said it's past due. We haven't said who you are. So it's one thing that we can do as a way to just demonstrate some intelligence that gets the person quickly, ergonomically, to where they want to go. It's more likely that they're calling about that bill. So let's predict that for them.
Okay, so what we're going to do at this time is we're going to just open this up to the audience. We've kind of been doing a little quasi live workshop session, but let's go ahead and dig into this a little deeper. We're going to just open this up to the audience. So you can use your Q&A box, or you can use your chat box and talk about what interactions are taking place in your contact center that you would consider a candidate for automation. You may be unsure if it can be automated at all. And what Mark and I will do is we'll step you through a conceptual approach to both solutioning and designing whatever challenge you bring up. This might be an interaction that your live agents are handling. You want to know can it be automated by AI? How would it be done in such a way that it would be a good experience? You may be on Touchstone IVR and you're wondering how you might be able to automate something that's coming through that way. And conversely, you may already be using conversational AI, but you're struggling with your conversation to be as frictionless as you'd like it to be. If you'd want to know how we would tackle that, go ahead and bring it up. We operate the AI-powered CX for more than 100 brands, so I don't think that we'll be surprised by anything that comes up. We will likely have already solved this problem with an adjacent player in your space or done something very similar. We can talk and step through just a little bit of how we've done that. So Mark and I will give you just a minute to go ahead and chime in with any challenges for Mark. Let's see if we can't stump Mark today and give him something that could be a challenge to deal with.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I see the questions are kind of pouring in here. So Bill asks, how does the AI enhance the scripting? It's a great question because they kind of complement each other. So I can script, the script is only going to be as good as the data that are available for the script. So if there's a CRM and there's no connection to it, so there's no API to the CRM, I'm not going to be able to say, am I speaking with Brian? Because there's nothing that I can do with that phone number except maybe a public 411 lookup to say, maybe this is Brian. And I'm not going to be able to say, are you calling about your recent order? Are you calling about your bill that's due? I'm not going to be able to do any of that without the data that are available. And the data really power the AI. So that would be my answer to that question, Bill. Hopefully that helps.
Good. All right. Well, so Mark, I have a few here that I can pick and choose from and see which of these that we want to tackle first. Looks like we have somebody in healthcare related that wants to know, how we would tackle scheduling. Scheduling is, clearly, one of the top drivers coming in. I don't know if this is with a hospital or clinician. We do both. So that's one that we can tackle. We have another one in here related to food ordering. I don't know what type of food ordering that would be. If you're talking about a restaurant, we've had this conversation with restaurants who have approached us that we thought that was just too complex. But we are working with quick service restaurants, so we can maybe assume that that has kind of a little bit more limited menu. Mark, we could talk about that. And also related to, I guess, insurance policies. So, and we do things for insurers like State Farm and windshield repair and whatnot. So those are some pieces that we can dive into. Do we want to tackle the healthcare scheduling first?
Sure, that sounds good. So for healthcare scheduling, let me get into the eraser here and just take away the end states piece. I mentioned we do a front door and maybe some intent and then authentication and then routing. So let's say that, the person came in and they said that their intent was, they want to schedule an appointment. Then once we go through HIPAA authentication.
And I guess, Mark, too, you may want to address how we handle that now for healthcare and for clinicians. The biggest pieces that are automated by AI in the healthcare space right now, they're related to scheduling, both inbound, and then your outbound follow-ups, and also related to billing or payment, both inbound and outbound, as first party collect. So that front door, typically then, Mark, as somebody is calling in, you're really just trying to capture those two intents or what other intent they might have. For some clinicians, it's actually, you add another one, it's going to be related to refills on prescriptions, but you're just essentially looking for those intents and anything else. What if something doesn't fit one of the self-service intents, where does it go?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's say we've worked with you, like you're a hospital and we've worked with you to design this conversation. And the only things you want to automate are scheduling an appointment or billing. So I'm going to put down here, billing and scheduling. And if the caller comes in here and says that their intent is to schedule an appointment, great. We can we can do that. We can continue down HIPAA authentication and route them to scheduling the appointment, and expand that out to the appointment flow, which I'll get into here, in a minute. But
Now,
if they said
there's
something,
there's
I'm just
some
going to answer your
definite.
question here. If they said something that's not scheduling an appointment or billing, if they said something else, if they said, I need to complain about my care, at that point we would say, okay, no problem. I just need to ask a few questions before I route you to the appropriate agent. And we would get the HIPAA authentication done and then kick that out to an agent to handle. We would pop up on the screen to the agent that this person has a complaint and it's Brian and he was in here, his whole record would come up on the agent's screen. So we would integrate with whatever your agents are using and push that over through an API so that they're pulling up that patient's record and know what was the last thing he was in here for and why he might be complaining.
Yeah, in fact, maybe you want to take through the first tier. If you know that they're calling to schedule an appointment in a hospital, this can get pretty complex. For a clinician, it's less complex, but in a hospital, it can be very complex. They can be calling in to speak with schedule with a particular doctor. They could be calling in. They might want to give symptoms. They don't even know where they need to be transferred. They're calling in with symptoms. Others are calling in with doctors' names. How are you tackling that conversation when somebody comes in, and what's the first option that you're giving them?
Yeah, the easiest thing first is to, HIPAA authenticate them and understand the doctors that they recently
Right.
visited, right? So their primary care physician may be Dr. Smith, and we would say, "Oh, do you want to schedule an appointment with Dr. Smith's office?" That's the quickest path to solving that goal, right? So accomplishing that goal. If they say yes, then great. We can just go right into the scheduler and get Dr. Smith's availability and start negotiating that appointment with the caller. If they say, I don't know, or we don't have a recent doctor that's available for them, we may ask a triage question like, okay, are you calling? Please tell me the discipline you're calling for, such as orthopedic surgery, physical therapy, radiology, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a list of those things that we're listening for. If they can tell us what they're being referred for, great. Or if it's just primary care, then we've got those doctors too. And we can just kind of narrow it down based from general to more complex.
Right. Excellent. And Mark, do you want to continue to take us down the scheduling path? Because then I have a couple more questions that have come in from the audience.
Sure. Yeah. Just real quick, the way we do scheduling typically is we find in the calendar the first appointment available, and we'll say the first appointment I have for you is next Tuesday at 8:00. Would that work for you? And if they say yes, good, we're good to go. We're scheduling that. Bling, there's a little chime sound effect. Great, you're scheduled. We'll, there may be an option that we have here. Do you want us to send you a text message to follow up and to keep you abreast of this appointment or to remind you of it? And they'll say, yeah, okay, great, we'll text you. If they said, no, that's not going to work for me, we'll say, okay, then please tell me a date and time that will work for you. And then if they say one and we find it and it works, great. Typically there's something adjacent like, oh, I don't have that. And we'll say, I don't have that exact time, but I do have next Tuesday at 8:30. Would you like that? And if they say yes, great, we're good to go. If they say no, then we say, okay, we'll offer them that adjacent appointment. And then we'll say, if they say no to it, we'll ask them again, please tell me, after that time, what's the latest or the most adjacent basically date and time that you'd like to come in. If that fails, then there's something up and they want to talk to somebody, so we get them to an agent to speak to.
So Mark, this has come back. I got actually 4 questions here to pepper you with.
Sure.
This one is from Nina. Says, hey, can you take us through doing something like doing address capture or address change?
Yeah.
Like a home address or shipping address, because the question is there's so many possible street names, there's so many possible towns, that would be hard to understand. How would we be able to do this, successfully? And we do this use case actually for a number of brands.
Yeah.
We do a lot of address change. And it's good to point out that there absolutely is some complexity there, because we kind of talked early on. Hey, it's nice if you can narrow the aperture responses that you're getting down to a few if possible. But when you're talking about street names, and cities, that's an extremely wide aperture.
Yeah, it's really tough, right? So the way we solve that problem is we limit ourselves currently today. We'll be expanding, I'm sure, in the future, but today we're limiting ourselves to U.S. and Canada, right? So our address capture over voice is U.S. and Canada. Over chat, it's a lot more versatile, and we have a lot more capabilities there. But let's just say on the voice, I'm going to draw a little phone here. On the voice channel, we're doing U.S. and Canada addresses. So we'll say, let's take US. We'll say first, tell me your zip code.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do zip first. And what that does is it takes that giant aperture of addresses all over the USA and it says, okay, we're just listening for this one zip code.
Or
Right?
we're listening for street names in that one zip code.
Exactly. So yeah, we've identified this zip code, and now we'll say, give me your street address, such as 123 Main Street.
Right.
Or I'll take one that's more complex here, like La Cienega.
And Mark, you're not asking for the street, the house number, and the street name all together, or you're asking for
do.
those separately?
We're asking them together. Give me
Okay.
your street address, such as 123 Main Street.
Okay.
So we're listening for the number, and then we're listening for the address, and we know that, or the name of the street. So we know that this street name is going to be in this one very small set of street names which are in that zip code. And the way that speech recognition works is that if you train it on a pattern, and we're doing this on the fly within the call because they just gave us the zip code. So on the fly, we're looking for that zip code and the number of streets that are in that zip code. We're training the AI on just listening for these streets. They'll say La Cienega, and we'll say, okay, the next thing will be, if there's an apartment or house number, tell me that. Or you can say there isn't one, and they say there isn't one. Okay, great. Then we'll recap, and we'll say, okay, you said you're at 123 La Cienega in Los Angeles, California, correct? We won't repeat back the zip code. We just use it to get the city and state. And they'll say, yeah, that was my address. So, and if they said no, that was wrong, then we'll go up and say, let me do that again. Let's try one more time. If it's wrong a second time, then we'll need to go out to an agent.
The important point here, Nina, that Mark made, as you can see, when he was able to ask the zip code first, by limiting the scope of the street names that we're listening for, that allows the AI to take whatever it hears and pattern match against those street names. Because as we all know, speech rec is never 100% right, but it's oftentimes within 5 to 15 degrees of separation of the intended response. And this allows Smart Action to do kind of like that fuzzy match, where even if the speech to text transcription was wrong, we can examine the acoustic models of what we heard against what we're listening for, and that's how you drive up that really high accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see what else. So Kel has this question, and we talked about just a little bit. How do you do intent clustering? He says, as a caller, I may have more than 2+ intents at a time. And Mark, clearly this is something that you and your team, you're thinking about commonly on every conversation that you're having, on how many questions do we have to ask, how many intents to respond. Like you gave the example of doing the house name, the house number, and the house name in a single question. There were 2 different intents essentially there that you're listing for in a single question. How do you approach that as far as with the capabilities you can get from the AI that you're using?
Yeah, it's a great question. And currently today, we'll try to do one intent at a time. So if someone said a couple different intents, we'll try to pick the first one that they said and say, okay, let's handle that. And then at the end of, going through that transaction, whatever that is, say, okay, is there anything else you need help with today? And then they'll give us the second intent, and we'll do that first. So we do try to force a sequential intent handling.
So let me see here. What's the next question I have for you? This one is, Uh, so here I have some good ones for you. Well, first, Mark, this is from Ken. He says business owners are oftentimes convinced that it's easy to move from IVR to conversational AI. They don't necessarily quite understand the art associated with creating conversations. How do you convince them that it's a heavy lift?
Yeah.
That should involve experts. And Ken, it's a great question. It can certainly be seen from the outside until at some point we put somebody like Mark in a room with someone like that for an hour to say, let's sit down and talk about how we would actually script this conversation, the data that we be required at any point in the conversation, all the data points, if even that are required before someone would start a self-service journey, and even Mark, the complexity of identifying certain interactions that may not be a good the entirety of the interaction may not be good for AI, but there might be that 50% or 70% of the callers are actually taking a path that's really relevant for AI. So
Yeah.
Ken brings up a really pertinent point. How do you tackle that as you run into it?
It is a good point, and I think you just got to kind of work on them a bit. Depends on the person's personality. I might send them the recording of this webinar and say, "Look, I think you really need to take a look at this. It's kind of eye-opening. It's sort of changed my mind about it." Um, and there's also like some people just can't be convinced, right? They have to be shown, and they have to. If someone says, "Okay, we're just going to change from typical press button IVR to conversational AI," go get a vendor that's a do-it-yourself platform, bring it in, and set it up. Ken, go for it. And you might do it and say, "Okay, well, I don't want to be in trouble here, but this it's not going to work out so well. I'll show you." And then you might set up a conversation that that you start to test with a small group of your customers, and sort of through trial and error either iterate and get to something that's acceptable and good, or it's just an illustration to the powers that be that you really need to bring in a consultant or some other group to help craft the conversation for
In
your
fact,
company.
Mark, I even think what would even help is for someone just to even look at the schematic of a conversation flow and all the business rules associated and all the things that are being taken into consideration.
Yeah.
As soon it isn't until somebody looks at something that is, and there are use cases that are potentially easy. There's simple one-way conversations, but typically there's far more complexity involved here than some would otherwise know. And it isn't until they really see the full schematic,
Yeah.
the conversation business rules, until you really begin to understand that.
And Brian, I think that's a great point. And what Joe Russo would say if he were here, I'm sorry you couldn't make it, but he talks a lot about the CSAT scores, so customer satisfaction scores at AAA, and our automated conversations factor into that CSAT score. So if AAA's members, they don't even call them customers, they're members, right? If their members are not satisfied with the conversations that are happening within the automation, Joe gets in trouble. So one angle to press upon when discussing this with the business is the customer satisfaction and the customer experience being a holistic and fully thought out initiative within the organization, and that just having maybe somebody in the call center write a call flow for automation is unfair to that person to burden them with doing, because it's a whole, they're going to be the most important consultant for someone like us. Like, I will work with the call center supervisor more often than anyone else, because I need to know what their customers are going to expect and what their current call center business rules and scripts are. So let's say, for example, I've got this whiteboard up here. Before I set up this call flow, what I typically do is consume all the live agent training materials that an organization has for their live agents. So pretend I'm starting day one as a call center agent. I'm going to sit in a cubicle. I often, before COVID, I would travel to the call center and do a tandem headphone with the call center agents for like a day or two, and really understand the feel for the cadence and the customer experience that their customers are used to. So I read all those materials. I do a call center study like that, and understand, where their customers are coming from in order to even get to the point where I'm building this call flow. I hope that answers your question, and I didn't just ramble into multiple different directions.
Well, let's see some other questions here for us to jump into from Stephen. Do we work with other contact center services? He gave as an example like a Nice and Contact or 8x8. The answer is yes. He wants to know, are we considered a competitor to them? We're not considered a competitor to them. We partner with both of them. In the case of Nice and Contact, we're one of only 2 conversational AI vendors that they work with. But when we look across our landscape of customers, we have every contact center as a service platform you can imagine we work with. And this one is, I'll throw this your way, Mark. How do you recommend if we want to capture email address?
Yeah, email address is so hard over the phone, even for human beings. Like it's really hard. So what we always recommend is say, okay, we're, the bot's having the conversation, right? So it's going through here, and at some point it needs to, we're capturing the address, and then the next thing is capture email address, right? So we'll say, all right, I can send you an SMS, and then just reply with your email address, and I'll stick that into your customer file. That's one way we do it. Another way to do it is if we're within, Brian said we're going to, keep this to the voice channel today. But if we're already, so I just showed you some channel switching to capture an email address on SMS. But if we're already in a rich web chat scenario, so like if the person's already, got their phone and we're chatting with them, maybe there's some images or buttons that we're using, we'll just very quickly, maybe even up front, ask for their email address so that, it's because it's a key piece of information that that you want to have on your customers. Yeah. So we'll get it very easily through a rich web chat situation.
Yeah, and also just to be clear, there's nobody in the voice automation space, not a single player who is doing email address capture. It was a conversation we had, in fact, with one of the largest voice speech players, one of the big 3 that you would know, were asking us if we could do email capture for them, because there's nobody in the space that is doing it or can do it. The pattern matching approach just does not work as you can use in other use cases. Now, if we have something on file, already that we're essentially authenticating against, we can do a very high accuracy rate. But the problem is when it comes to capturing email addresses that there is no margin of error. It needs to be 100% right. So as Mark mentioned, the channel switch, getting that over from text over chat works well. And we have a instance with another client. Well, when it comes to email capture, it's related to their, I believe it's their product registration. We capture everything. Model number, serial number, alphanumeric, all of that, except when it comes to the email address, we will hand that off for human transcription and then load that into the CRM post.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian. There is that avenue or option to have the person on the phone. Okay, tell me the first part of your email address just before the @ symbol. Okay, it's mark.landry. Okay, now tell me after the @ symbol, what's the domain, such as gmail.com. And then the person will say gmail.com. And then we'll be sending that to a live transcriber, to listen and put that into some data packet that goes back to the client, rather than switching the channel to the SMS. So that is an option. It's just a more, I think, clunky and, sort of on its way out option. It's the low tech option.
Yeah, and this question, this is a follow up to the address that we were talking about. They wanted to know, well, are we able to confirm that it is a legit United States Postal Service address? And the answer is yes. And the reason that is important is not just we already know that the street number, or I mean the street name, but we also know on the street number.
Yeah, we're checking that against the address database in the Postal Service. And if it's something that's wrong, if it doesn't fit, our bot will be confused. It'll say, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. And it will either ask them again, or we can just make a business rule to transfer to an agent because that person must have the wrong address and they need to talk to a human being.
So, well, Mark, I know we were peppered with questions coming up here, and we're sitting right here at the top of the hour. We do still have some other questions that we didn't get to. What we will do, knowing that we're at the top of the hour, we will be sending a follow-up email to everybody who attended. As soon as the on-demand webinar, as soon as this webinar renders as an on-demand, you will see somebody who will follow that up. It may come over likely tomorrow morning, or I guess that's going to be a Saturday. It'll either come over on Saturday morning, it will come over on Monday morning for you with the on-demand of this webinar. And if you had any questions that we didn't get to, you can just reply directly to whoever the Smart Action representative is that sends that to you, because we're more than happy to continue this as a one-on-one conversation. Mark, really appreciate your time and detailed attention on this. Any final closing remarks before we close out?
No, I really appreciate everyone joining. This is a lot of fun for me. This is kind of how I like my job. I dig it, and if the more I can help in these situations and answer questions, the happier I am. So I appreciate it.
Yep, and if interested to see what we're doing for for use cases that you have in your vertical, and would like to see how we're automating those already over either voice or chat for other players adjacent to you in your same industry, just let us know. We can set up a demo and let you see what we're already doing and find out how does this apply to your business and what would be an expected ROI. That's what we do. So happy to offer any engagement that's needed once this is closed out. And happy Friday. So thank you
Yeah.
for everyone who was able to join today. Thank you, Mark. And we'll talk to you all soon.